Welcome back to LA Catholic Morning here on Archangel Radio. I'm Todd Sylvester here with Michelle McAloon. Mike the Great's producing like a boss over there. We have with us on the line Bay McFarland here to share with us about Mary's Advocates. You can connect with her at marysadvocates.org. Good morning, Bay.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Difficult topic, unfortunately. I'll tell you, Bay, my wife unfortunately has to live with me, and it's hard for her with my ranting at times. We were driving along the highway some years back, and I started yelling at a billboard. And she's like, will you just calm down? And I said, it's absolutely ridiculous when they use the term no-fault divorce and they put an actual price on there, $199. Like, that is insane. And she's like, just calm down, calm down. But this really is a problem, right, Bay?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's the concept that the government can take over a family and make it split in two because one party asked for it. The other party could be a perfect saint. It's all irrelevant.
That's just not right. There's something so wrong and disturbing about that.
And you're friends with Dr. Rick Fitzgibbons, and one of the really sad things, and he says, and I see this in my annulment work, it's very, very rare that both want a divorce. Someone is being left behind.
Exactly. And in my work with Mary's Advocates, our principle is trying to reduce unilateral no-fault divorce, which is when one party wants it and the other doesn't. And what a lot of people think is that both parties want it. I hear this talk about, the parties divorced, they settled. It's like, well, they, plural, probably didn't settle. One person wanted divorce and the other person was probably coerced.
Oh, okay, so then how does that work? Technically, I thought, and of course, I'm sorry, I'm naive. How does that work? If one person doesn't want a divorce, can't they stop this?
Absolutely not. Because of no-fault divorce, when one party comes forward and satisfies whatever the legislator in their state said, whether it be alleged irretrievable breakdown or incompatibility, whatever it is the plaintiff has to allege, once they do that, then the judge is kind of obligated, according to the legislation, to force the family to split, which means split property, children, and decide some kind of support plan. So what happens is a defendant who doesn't want their family split has to choose. We either pay lawyers hundreds or tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to pass paperwork back and forth as we argue about children and property and support, or we settle, which means I sign a document saying I agree to split my family, when really they're not agreeing. They're just, accepting the lesser of two evils.
Tell us a little bit about your work in Mary's Advocates and what the mission of Mary Advocates is. Mary's Advocates, sorry.
Yeah, it's twofold. Community outreach to reduce unilateral no-fault divorce, and then support those who are unjustly abandoned. And I come at it from a Catholic perspective, but I also come at it from a United States Constitution perspective, because there's plenty of arguments that could be made that no-fault divorce is unconstitutional. Like a defendant is accused in a civil case, though the defendant is never alleged to having done anything to break any law or violate any agreement. It's like if I come to you, Todd, and say, I want a divorce because I decide I don't like you. It's like, well, wait a minute. What'd you do? Did you beat me up? Did you commit adultery? Are you squandering all our money? None of that matters. So there are some constitutional principles, but that's a little, that's enough said about that. The other thing I've ended up doing is becoming a self-study expert on the church teaching doctrine and canon law about separation of spouses and divorce, and a little bit about annulment. But there's a whole section of the Catechism and canon law that is supposed to be implemented prior to anyone being permanently separated, prior to anyone petitioning in the civil forum for a divorce. The church has a lot more power, according to our own canon law, than we're giving it much credit. And then finally, just to support those who are unjustly abandoned, we have a network of people who are separated or divorced, who are confident that their marriages are valid, they would never petition for a decree of invalidity, and they intend to uphold their marriage promises in good times and in bad, and being separated just happens to be bad, or it's uncomfortable.
Wow.
And we support each other in that walk, because most of the secular culture, say, oh, you deserve better. You're better without him if he doesn't really want you. You're still young. You can find someone who appreciates you. You're single again. All this kind of talk, which is just not true.
I love this conversation because I'm the defender of the bond, as most people know, in the tribunal, and my one job is to uphold the dignity of marriage. And so this is, when I saw Mary's Advocates, I was like, ding, 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 ding. So this is really good. And you're right, marriage is the purvey of the church. And one of the things that's happened here in the state of Alabama is the government has walked back on issuing marriage certificates. So now in Alabama, your marriage is merely notarized. That's it. It's merely notarized and recognized. So the church, believe it or not, has a real opportunity to come back into the business of marriage. This legislation will sweep through the United States. In Colorado, I think they're doing this now. So it will keep going. And I believe what you're saying, Bay McFarland, is the time is coming.
Well, Michelle, we had talked about this a little bit when I talked to you on the phone a couple weeks ago. One of the resources that Mary's Advocates has is a document designed for people to sign that would have the weight of a prenuptial agreement or a postnuptial agreement, where parties sign an agreement saying, we intend to be married and uphold our obligations towards each other as defined by the norms that we choose. And really, as Catholics, when you enter a Catholic marriage, you're doing that anyway. You're just not signing a document that's designed to be enforceable in the civil forum. But if Alabama churches no longer have the state doing this whole state marriage license thing, what do you think about the idea of the churches saying to engaged parties, well, you're doing something very formal here. We live in a written culture. Here, take a look at this document that we invite you to sign, where you agree that you want to uphold the marriage obligations as defined by our own church doctrine and canon law.
Amen, sister. Amen. I'm up for it.
I mean, isn't that what we're saying with the vows, though? See, I'm old-fashioned, Bay. I'm still kind of confused. And by the way, we're speaking with Bay McFarland. You can connect with her at marysadvocates.org. But before no-fault divorce, it was very difficult to get a divorce, wasn't it?
It was more difficult. And the thing that I'm most excited about, or most passionate about, is what rules, norms, principles, what principles are used to decide parties' obligations in a case of separation? Because back in the old days with fault-based divorce, I remember a friend of mine's dad was committing adultery, and they were in a fault-based system, and the mom did not want the children to have overnight visits with the adultering dad and his new sex partner, and the civil forum allowed mom to have that power so that children would be prevented from the scandal of having to spend overnights where mommy or daddy go to bed with someone besides, the other parent.
Right.
Because that's scandalous.
Right.
But also the financial arrangements. If you had a dad who earned a lot more money than a mom, or the mom was a stay-at-home mom, in the old days, the court would expect the dad to continue supporting the mom. Well, with no-fault divorce, you think you're going to get a lot of support from dad to raise minor children? No, they don't care. They expect everything to be split 50-50, property split 50-50 is the default. Moms, you have to go out and get full-time work. Your kids will be in daycare or whatever you can figure out. So the thing I'm passionate about is in the church's system, we recognize justice. We recognize the obligations of parties to support a marital home. So if someone reneges on their marriage promises in the church system, the victim isn't given the same outcome that would be given in no-fault divorce. So that's what I would love to see implemented. And when you say you were confused, can you elaborate a little bit more about this? I do have to apologize because I'm so deep in the forest, I can't even, I can't. No, I need some help here. What can I clarify?
It's just, I'm just so naive. My wife and I are about to celebrate 30 years of marriage. And when we got married, fairly young, I guess, in today's terms, we were both 22. we stood there at the altar bay and we said, I'm going to be committed to you until one of us dies. To me, that's just simple math. So, and I understand that there are struggles and difficulties, and I get that, but I don't understand why we've made it so easy to walk away from those vows. I mean, we've just made it so stinking easy where we put billboards up and it's $199. And you see, I'm getting mad again.
Well, you're probably in good company. I think St. Thomas More would be mad. And I think Sister Lucia, the visionary from Fatima, who had said that Blessed Mother told her that Satan says his last battle will be against marriage and family. We're living in an insane time where the secular culture is pushing evil. So I would say no-fault divorce is simply evil. So what does the church do in response to that? What should Catholics do in response to that? Because we all face temptation. I mean, say you were, I don't know, say you had a pornography problem. Would you object to having a filter on your phone? Maybe not. Would you object to having someone overseeing you to help you not go watch your pornography so much? Well, in marriage, people might have temptations, so why not set something up in the beginning saying, you know, I want outsiders to encourage me to keep my marriage promises instead of rewarding me for breaking them, which is what no-fault divorce does. And Todd, when you say you're naive, you are not alone. When I started this work, and even people presently, they're shocked when they find out, wait a minute, my husband can force a divorce on me just because he says so and we both don't agree. Or there are priests who repeat that parties, plural, want a divorce.
Yeah,
people
that's a great
think
point.
that it's both parties wanting it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a great point. And I tell you, I think there's so much work to be done here, especially by the church, because the church really, in many ways, just handed over marriage to the government. I think it's going to come back. And so I'm glad you're out there, Bay McFarland, doing this kind of work. There's a lot of fertile ground to cover on this. And what you're saying is exactly right.
And the other thing that I've seen is there's more and more people recognizing that it hurts children. All the social sciences supports that the norm is that children do best in a home with their natural mom and dad together. And then I also am finding there's a lot of kind of like experts at reconciliation. And I don't just mean, you know, your local Catholic Charities person who says they're a Catholic counselor. You know, they might be pro-divorce, but there's more resources out there where 90% of the problems experienced our couples are the same problems that are experienced by 90% of the other couples. It's like most of these things are same old, been there, go around. People don't change that much. So people can learn to be virtuous, and it's beautiful.
It
like
is.
Retro Life, for example, talks about 4 stages of marriage, and there's this romantic stage, and then there's a disillusionment stage. You know, Michelle, would you say amongst your peers, I mean, is that what you see? People have to push through these stages, and sometimes it feels terrible.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. There's really a growing awareness on the value of marriage, even if it's a very small majority of the population or small minority of the population. That awareness is absolutely growing about the fact of fatherlessness and divorce and children. Bay McFarland, hey, you know what? We pray for your work. Guys, go and take a look at Mary's Advocates. There's so much good information on here. So it's very good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Michelle. Bye, Todd.
Take care, Bay.